The Golden State Warriors dynasty is alive and thriving, knocking off the Celtics on their home floor inside TD Garden to claim their 4th championship in 8 seasons. That was Game 6 last night. Steph Curry, the man on your screen, who was just on your screen, leaving his critics with nothing else to say after winning his first Finals MVP. What's good, everyone? It is Friday. You are watching The Sweat, presented by DraftKings. For that, we are grateful. I am Emerson Latzia. We're going to talk about who to roster on the Diamond. We've got about 12 games on the slate coming up. We're also going to look ahead to some of the best DFS plays before Game 2 of the Stanley Cup Final. That is tomorrow night. We're going to sprinkle in little F1s, maybe some NFL news as well. But let's start on the hardwood because our NBA panel consists of a couple green teamers here. Yeah, Jeff Pratt, Matt Meiselman, Chinmay Vaidya. Chinmay, you're not a Celtics fan, are you?
I'm not.
Okay.
And it took me it took me a lot to root against the Celtics because they do have some likable players. But
Yeah.
the most likable team in the finals this time was Golden State Warriors.
Yeah, and you're wearing your Golden State Warriors colors this morning. Jeff, sources are telling me you cried yourself to sleep last night. So how were the Warriors able to win 3 straight in this series and ended up hoisting the Larry O'Brien trophy?
Does it look like I'm crying, Emerson?
You actually look great. Like your skin looks great, your hair looks great, your smile looks great.
Look, I'm never one to dwell on things. I am appreciative of what the Celtics did this season. The better team won in the finals, so I can give props to the Warriors. And what they did was they figured out how to rebound and limit Boston's advantage in the paint. The Warriors were out rebounded 47-31 and outscored 52-26 in points in the paint in Game 3. And then over the next 3 games, they were able to close out that margin significantly. And then they just started making shots and really got into a flow with their offense. And then the Celtics just couldn't match that. The Warriors role players also stepped up as the series went along. Jordan Poole figured it out. Draymond Green actually became a factor. Andrew Wiggins played like a star. Otto Porter was fantastic throughout the entire series. And then on Boston's side, their bench completely disappeared. The bottom line is Golden State figured it out when it mattered most, and the Celtics just couldn't weather the storm.
Matty, years down the road, you're going to look back at this NBA Finals, and how will you remember it?
Am I supposed to talk now? I have
Yeah.
to have some.
Go ahead. You okay?
Oh, man.
You seem emotional.
I will remember it as a massive missed opportunity where the better team fell apart and gave the finals away.
Wait a minute. You
Yeah.
can't call them the better team if they didn't win the title. The Warriors just won 3 straight.
The Suns were better than the Warriors too, and they didn't even get there. Sometimes the better team doesn't win. Sometimes they don't. The
I don't
Florida
understand
Panthers
how you
got
could.
by the Tampa Bay Lightning. They were the better team also. Sometimes the better team just doesn't win.
Okay, to me it just doesn't make sense to call the team that didn't win the championship the better team. But
The
anyway,
Warriors certainly played better in the finals.
Yeah.
I will certainly grant
that sounds like
because
something the better team would do.
sometimes. But the Celtics just couldn't take care of the ball. Like, I know we've been talking about this for weeks and weeks, and it's like when the Celtics take care of the ball, they win, and they just didn't do it. It's not like the Warriors' offense was great. They actually, like, they were pretty mediocre, scoring around 100 points in most of their wins. I will give the Warriors' defense a lot of credit, but like, my God, the turnovers, and it's specifically the live ball turnovers where it's just points at the other end, like free baskets when Jaylen Brown's just falling on the ground, Jason Tatum just not playing the way that he was. I'm not going to make excuses about the shoulder because, honestly, I think the game plan and the focus was more of an issue than Tatum's health. So that's the one excuse I really don't want to make. Tatum just played terribly, so I really feel like the Celtics gave this one away. Yeah, I don't know. That's about it.
No, it's all good.
That's how I'll remember it.
And Tatum said afterwards he does not believe he's going to need surgery on that shoulder. I mean, Chinmay, is it more, I guess, of what the Warriors did or more of what the Celtics did not do? Matt referenced the turnovers. That was 23 turnovers last night, including 7 over the course of 11 possessions at the end of the second quarter.
And Jeff and Matt both talked about it, and I think they're all factors in why the Celtics lost this series after going up 2-1. It was the rebounding battle. The Warriors absolutely crushed the Celtics on the boards after that Game 3 loss. It was the turnovers, specifically live ball turnovers. And, you know, I kind of agree with what Matt is talking about in that maybe not necessarily the better team didn't win, but the best team on paper, if both teams played at the top of their capabilities, you would see the Celtics coming out over the Warriors. That's what all the analytical models predicted to quite a heavy margin. But the fact of the matter is that the Celtics didn't play up to their capabilities and the Warriors did. And that's really what it comes down to. So I think the Warriors were the better team when it came to executing the game plan and actually playing the game. The Celtics, though, were probably the better team when you looked at all the metrics. And really, I think it was the turnovers, the live ball turnovers. That's where the Warriors got a lot of points where they were struggling in the half court, but they made up for those points in the turnovers. And then the rebounding battle was huge. And Boston's defense in key moments just fell apart. So it kind of all came together game 5, game 6, and that was it for Boston, because after game 3, the Warriors looked like a different team, and those were the reasons why.
Yeah, Jeff, there were some disappointing performances out of the Celtics offense, too, throughout this series. How were the Warriors able to put the squeeze on the C's offense?
I have no idea how they contained Jason Tatum the way they did.
Well, it's called Andrew Wiggins, baby. That's who it is, who should have been the MVP.
It's called Andrew Wiggins. And I think, listen, we have to come back here. You really saw the difference between a team that entered this series with 123 combined games of finals experience versus a team that had absolutely no prior experience on the biggest stage. And it showed in every aspect of the series. The Celtics were able to get off to a hot start. But when it got down to the nitty gritty, the Warriors were able to figure it out because they had been there. They had done that. They knew what it took to win a championship. And at the end of the day, it was just not turning the ball over. We all knew the stat. Boston was 1-7 in the postseason when they turned the ball over 16 times. Well, it felt like they almost hit that mark in the first half last night. You can't beat anyone in this league if you turn the ball over 23 times. And then what they did defensively, I mean, it's a head scratcher because you feel like the physicality that Boston saw throughout the postseason to get to this point was much tougher than what Golden State presented in the finals. They went through Milwaukee. If you look at what they did in the paint and what they had Giannis and Brook Lopez, who was just pushing people away whenever the Celtics tried to get to the bucket. And then the Heat are one of the toughest teams in the NBA. You look at the Warriors and you say, okay, they're undersized. Kevon Looney is their only true big man. And then you got Draymond Green, who didn't look like himself for the majority of the series. So how did they shut the Celtics down? I don't know. I'm going to have to go back and look at some of the tape. I understand it was execution-wise. They played it perfectly, but this is a frustrating one for Boston.
And Maddie, finals MVP going to Steph Curry, the first in his career. I mean, how much can you doubt his legacy now? How much can doubters doubt his legacy?
Oh, not at all. And I don't think I was doubting Steph Curry even before this. Like, I honestly think that finals MVPs and even championships to some extent get overvalued when it comes to historically great players because basketball is a team sport.
Yep.
And Curry was already up amongst the greatest players of all time, even before this. So I'm not downing Steph at all. But the last thing I do want to say about the Celtics, really, before this, before we don't have to talk about them anymore, is just to reject this idea of experience winning out here. Like, I don't really agree because the best players on the Warriors, or besides Curry, the guys that really stepped up were guys like Andrew Wiggins and Kevon Looney and Gary Payton, who don't have that experience. And Draymond Green was terrible for half the series. Klay Thompson shot 5 for 20 in the closeout game. Like, Draymond and Klay were not that good. And then even Jordan Poole came in off the bench. Obviously, he doesn't have any finals experience and stepped up really well, too. So you could argue, like, okay, maybe it's stuff that Draymond and Steph and Andre Iguodala did with them in practice that got them there. Maybe that's an argument you can make. But the Celtics had veterans, too, and, like, Marcus Smart didn't play great. I think it was, like, the Warriors' younger players, like Gary Payton specifically, were a huge reason for all the turnovers that we saw. So I think the whole team deserves credit, and it's a lot of guys that didn't have finals experience.
All right, Chinmay, what are they going to say now? Andrew Wiggins, like, carried the team here?
That's exactly what the Warriors were saying in the post-game, news conference and presentation. What are they going to say now? In 2015, it was, LeBron didn't have any help. Kyrie was hurt. Kevin Love was hurt. In 2017 and 2018, it was Kevin Durant, and it was a super team. And what are they going to say now? So I think Mike Greenberg on the countdown presentation kind of hinted at this, and I think it makes a lot of sense. This was like the validation title for the Golden State Warriors. Like, there were no excuses here for anybody to poke holes in the Warriors this time. Like, this team was good and was good throughout their whole run, and this kind of cemented it. And we'll see what they can. I mean, this team is not going anywhere. You know, ever since that first championship, there has never been a series that the Warriors have lost when Steph, Clay, and Draymond have played in every single game. They haven't lost a postseason series yet since that first championship. So this team is not going anywhere, and I think it was great for Steph Curry to finally get a Finals MVP. He probably should have won in 2015. We kind of value, you know, game impact is something that gets, you know, something that's overvalued, I think. And Iguodala did make an impact in that series, but I still think Steph was the best player for the Warriors then. And we'll see if he can keep it going. We'll see if this team can keep it going, because they haven't lost when those three guys are on the floor together for a whole series. And maybe they get another one. So it was a nice little validation of everything that they've accomplished as a trio and as an organization.
Jeff, Steph Curry carried this team most of the season, and now no one can point to Kevin Durant for this ring.
Absolutely. As much as Stephen Curry wants to play this off, winning Finals MVP is the one thing he had left on his bucket list. He admitted that he looks at social media, so he's got to be stuck knowing that he's hearing the narrative that he can't win without KD. He doesn't show up in the finals, and he got the last laugh on Thursday. We're talking about a 4-time NBA champion now, 2-time MVP, 8-time All-Star, and a guy who completely revolutionized the game. I try not to fall into recency bias, but there's a chance he had more of an impact on the game of basketball than any other player in NBA history. You look at how it's being played right now in the modern era. With this win, in my book, he's a top 10 player of all time. He deserves all the praise he's going to get. And then to quickly touch on the 2015 Finals MVP going to Andre Iguodala, can we now just look back on that, as Chime was saying, and realize how ridiculous it was that he got Finals MVP just for defending LeBron and containing LeBron? And I still think he averaged over 30 points per game in that series. So Curry should have got it back then, finally got it last night.
All right, let's go ahead and look ahead to next year's title odds, too, while you guys are here. Clippers, Warriors, Nets, Celtics all have the shortest odds, plus 600, top of the board there. Which team stands out? Which team would you bet right now, Maddie?
I'm extremely not ready to talk about this yet, but if I have to, I think there's two teams at 40-1 that are both interesting with the Utah Jazz. And I'll just leave them aside for now because Rudy Gobert, we don't really know where he's going to be, Donovan Mitchell. So that's contingent on certain roster moves. So I'll go with the other one instead, and that's the New Orleans Pelicans, who I think we kind of talked about this when they got eliminated. They get Zion Williamson back. That's a really good foundation that team has. So if there's any team that's currently a long shot that could really become a dominant force in the Western Conference or wherever, but just a team that can make a run to the finals, I think the Pelicans are probably the one bet. I mean, personally, I need some time off from NBA futures after this series, but like 2 days from now, maybe I'll take the Pelicans. I think 40-1 is a pretty good value.
I mean, Chinmay, usually with the NBA, you can count title contenders on one hand, but looking at the DK Sportsbook and these odds, you can look at close to like 10 teams that you can make a legitimate case for.
Yeah, and one thing to note is it's really early right now. The draft is going to change some things. Free agency will definitely change some things. There will be some trades in the offseason. Matt mentioned with Utah, there's going to be some moves there. So these odds will definitely shift. As of right now, I'm not going in the 40-1 long shot range. But one team to look at is the Milwaukee Bucks, who are just underneath those first four teams. The Bucks were up 3-2 on the Celtics in this postseason, and they didn't have Chris Middleton. Maybe if they have Chris Middleton, they win that series. They probably get past the Miami Heat. And then it's, a showdown with the Warriors in the finals. And who knows? Giannis is a tough matchup for Golden State. So I think the Bucks are definitely a value play if you're not looking at one of those top four teams. But if I'm picking right now, as I just alluded to, I can't pick against the Warriors. This is starting to look like a fool's errand to try to predict when this team is going to go away. So at this moment, if you're looking for someone outside of that top four, I think the Bucks are a nice value add, but I can't pick against Golden State until I actually see them lose a series.
I mean, Jeff, Jaylen Brown saying the future looks bright here. I mean, maybe 1 year for some of these young guys to grow up, plus 600 odds.
I'm going to look a little further down the board. I won't talk
Good
about
job.
the
I am
Celtics
proud
anymore.
of you for doing this. I'm proud of you. This is a test.
Thank you. How about taking the team that just went to the Western Conference Finals and possibly picked up the key piece that they've been missing? The Mavericks having the 11th best odds to win the championship at plus 1,500 feels a little low to me. They have the resources to bring back Jalen Brunson if they want to. Spencer Dinwiddie looked fantastic in his role as their sixth man last year. And then they just traded for Christian Wood, a guy who can give you 17 and 10 on a nightly basis with the ability to stretch the floor. And the best part is they got him for basically nothing. I looked at that trade when it happened. First of all, I was shocked that Dallas pulled it off for what they gave up. And you look at his contract, you say, oh, well, maybe he's making more than you think. No, the dude's making like $14 million a year. Houston just dumped him for pretty much no reason. I understand he wasn't a fit there, but I feel like they could have gotten more. And then back to the Mavericks, they'll have a ton of interchangeable pieces to work with between Tim Hardaway Jr. coming back. People forget he was their second best player this year before he went down with an injury. Reggie Bullock, Dorian Finney-Smith. This is going to be a championship caliber team next year.
Guys, we have run out of time, close to 20 minutes reflecting on last night and looking ahead to next season. So for Matt and Jeff, thank you so much for your time and for overcoming the adversity and being brave enough this morning to join us and talk about your team losing in the NBA Finals. We will do MVP odds next week because Nick Whalen has said he's never coming on the show again if we did not include him in the RJ Barrett odds talking MVP for next year. It's going to be epic. And so was our conversation talking Stanley Cup Final with a trio of hockey heads right after this. Tomorrow night, Game 2 of the Stanley Cup Final will arrive. We got some numbers here we need to talk about. So it was the Avs winning in overtime, right? Knocking off the Lightning on their home ice in the Mile High. So look at this. When the home team wins Game 1, that would be the Avs in this situation, they win the series 74.7% of the time. That's great. Okay, but if the away team wins Game 2 to even the series, like if the Lightning win tomorrow night, they win the series close to 50% of the time. But if the home team wins Game 2 to go up 2-0 in the series, they win the series close to 90% of the time. So right here, even if the Lightning win tomorrow night, it's kind of like split, right? There's still an opportunity for the Avs to come away with this based off the numbers. And as everybody knows, numbers don't lie, and neither do these guys. DraftKings contributor Jeff Ulrich, we got RotoWire's Paul Bruno here. We got NHL.com's fantasy guru Pete Jensen. Hell of a panel for this morning. So let's go ahead and let's talk some showdown plays here, guys, for tomorrow night. Who are you going to captain? Like, you're going to save some money with Landeskog maybe for a repeat performance in Game 1, or do we want to pay up here for McKinnon or possibly someone in the crease? Paul.
I'm leaning on the numbers that you led off the segment with, Emerson. I'm looking for Tampa to make this a series. If they lose tomorrow night, you're right. It's a 90. I think it's a 90% chance Colorado's going to win this set, and that's a turn for me so that I don't want to see. I want to see this be a long, competitive series. And we, on the panel the other day on Game 1, we were all on Kucherov. He, other than one great play, was not quite as noticeable as he has been for much of these playoffs. I expect that to change. I expect Tampa to have a much better effort. They only lost by an overtime goal, and I didn't think they played very well at all. So the upside for them is huge, and I think Kucherov's going to be a big part of that.
Pete, McKinnon's going to cost you the most. He's 16-2. You brave enough stuffing that large salary in your lineup?
I'm definitely getting him into my mock lineup because of his shot volume alone, regardless of even if the Lightning bounce back. But as far as captain, I'm going with the hot hand here, Andre Palat for the Tampa Bay Lightning. I don't think many people in the grand scheme of things realize how productive this guy has been among the NHL's elite this postseason. He's got goals in 6 of his past 8 games. He's second in even strength goals this postseason behind Evander Kane, who's no longer playing in the playoffs because the Oilers got bounced. And then Palat is third in even strength points behind only McDavid and Draisaitl. So that's really high praise. I know those guys are eliminated too, but Palat is doing this all at even strength. It's been incredible how consistent he's been lately. So I'm banking on him for a big performance, and he brings that exposure to Kucherov as always.
Jeff, who are you banking on for a big performance? One big enough to pay up 1.5 times the salary for it, captain.
Yeah, I mean, I'm going to go against these guys and
Nice.
suggest that, I think that the Avalanche probably had a lot of pressure on them in game 1. They were nervous. They were a little bit rusty, and they still won the game after blowing a 2-goal lead. I think you see perhaps a multiple goal win by the Avalanche here. And I like going back to their first line. I think that going with the value with Valeri Nichushkin is smart. I mean, like, this guy, it's a coming out party for him these playoffs. What a great all-around player. What a great pickup he's been for Colorado. Just a really good depth player, now just slotted in alongside Nathan McKinnon. That first line for Colorado was all over Tampa Bay in game 1. I don't see a reason why it won't be the same. Nichushkin, 6 shots on net and a couple points in game 1. I think at 10-2, you can roster him. And I think the other contrarian move to go with Colorado is perhaps look at Darcy Kemper. Again, didn't have the greatest game 1, but he snuck through with the win. The rust is a little bit off now. The pressure's a little bit off because they've taken that game 1. Don't be shocked if Kemper, gets on a streak here, because he is a little bit of an underrated goalie. Everyone likes to talk about the advantage that Tampa has in net. He has gone through really hot stretches, so I don't mind being contrarian. Again, we're talking about a big field tournament here. I think going a little bit contrarian with Kemper makes sense.
Is there an obvious stack with your captain, Jeff?
Yeah, I mean, look, if you're playing Nichushkin, I mean, like Nathan McKinnon in the flex is just obviously a must. I mean, 5 shots on game 1, he was getting his shot through as well. In aggressive fours, he's really turned into the two-way guy, and they took it to the Tampa top 6 as well. So I think obviously pairing him with McKinnon, the whole reason why you take the value with a guy like Nichushkin in the captain would be to get McKinnon and other studs in your lineup. So McKinnon would be the obvious one. Obviously, you could play the entire line stack too, but I definitely like spending up for the Colorado forwards. The way they used their defense in game 1, it was more to shut down, especially that first defensive pairing with Cale Makar and Devin Taves. So I think definitely paying up for the Colorado forwards is where you should go. And obviously, if you're putting Nichushkin in the captains, you're putting McKinnon in the flex with him.
All right, Paul, hook me up, dude. Someone you're stacking with your captain.
Absolutely. I'm so glad that Pete mentioned Palat on this episode. I waxed poetic on him on the last one, quoting much the same stats, Pete. So I'm on side with that pick, and he'll be definitely part of my team. But I'm also going to include Victor Hedman. When they've needed this guy to come up big offensively, he has in prior series, I expect a tour de force effort from him in game 2 to lead this team. And I wouldn't be surprised if he gets at least 2 points in that game. He's done it before in other rounds in this playoff when they needed it most. The big defenseman has come through as a big part of the offense. I expect that in a big way in game 2. And Palat riding shotgun with the big boys, never a bad play in these playoffs. I think he's got to be in there. So that's 3 Tampa guys for sure, and maybe a 4th if I get Stamkos in there as well.
Pete, with your captain, who would make it a perfect pair?
I got a couple other Lightning guys to stack because I feel pretty confident about them bouncing back given their track record. I got Vasilevsky, I got Kucherov, and I got Ross Colton, who came very close to scoring in game 1. He seems due for a goal, in my opinion. So those are the other guys that I have from Tampa Bay in my mock lineup. Vasilevsky's been a little shaky on the road this postseason with a 909, 5-5. But again, following a loss, nearly unbeatable, just that one blip on the radar against the Rangers. And then, of course, they went on to win 4 straight. So I love the resiliency of Vasilevsky. I'd sneak him in. Past couple of showdown series, I've been fading the goaltenders, but give me Vasi in a bounce-back spot stacked with Palat and Kucherov, and we'll call it a day.
All right, but Pete, some big names that were held to some small fantasy numbers in Game 1. Is there anyone you actually want to stay away from in Game 2? Someone you're considering fading, huh?
It's hard to make a case to fade any of these guys. I'm not fading McKinnon or Makar. I will fade for now Braden Point just because he's on the third line, but that could change at any time.
Yeah.
Again, it's a tough assignment to fade any of these guys because it could be an offensive-minded series. I love the response from Tampa Bay, by the way, when they fell behind in Game 1. I felt like once they tied that game, all the pressure was on Colorado. That's something I expect to carry over to Game 2. But yeah, to answer your question, Braden Point no longer playing, not even in the top 6, but we're accustomed to seeing him as the top line center from recent postseasons. So for now, as he gets the juices flowing again, he gets back up to game speed. I know he had an assist in Game 1, but I will fade Braden Point here.
Jeff, would you consider fading like Darcy Kemper here? I know he's the winning goalie, but like if you look and dive into his numbers a little more, and I talked about it with Paul the other day, like it actually was not a very strong performance by him.
No, I mentioned it. There was clear rust. He only saw 23 shots against, obviously, and led in 3. But I do think you have to give Kemper credit for hanging in there, too. Tampa Bay tied the game. They were starting to ramp up the pressure and stuff like that, and he did hang in. I think that, again, everyone's going to be looking to Vasilevsky here. I really do think for the bounce back. I think that you've got to think about this from a strategy standpoint. Kemper has, yes, he's not as good a goalie as Vasilevsky. I think we all know that, but he's certainly capable of showing up with a big game here. And if Tampa does bring a few more shots on net, I think that the upside with Kemper is actually going to be better in Game 2. So I really don't mind fading Vasilevsky here because, again, everyone's kind of going to be playing for the Tampa bounce back, but Colorado is still the favorite at home. I think the pressure is a little bit off Colorado in this spot because they came through when they needed to in overtime, and Kemper could easily be the goalie who ends up with like a shutout or allows 1 goal. So I think Kemper is actually like a very strong contrarian play tonight. That's where I would go. I don't think there'll be very much ownership on him at all. It's obviously a highly volatile play, but I think paying up for him actually makes a lot of sense tonight with your lineups.
Paul, who is someone that you are definitely not going to roster tomorrow night in Game 2?
I'm going to fade Colorado's offensive defensemen, both Makar and Taves, and I'll tell you why. The Tampa strategy throughout these playoffs when they've needed victories is to use the cliche that you hear every intermission when they talk to these players. You got to get the pucks in deep. Well, just keep an eye on how many times they dump the puck over Makar and Taves into their corners and make them go 200 feet. They're going to get tired of doing that when the pressure's on, and Tampa's got to turn it up that way. And I think that's going to be a key part of their bounce back in this effort. And I also would fade Colorado's goaltending because I think they're in for a rough night. Tampa's going to play their game, and they're going to find their way back into this set. Guys,
Last one here, quickly. You don't get fantasy points for it, but who's winning tomorrow night, Pete?
I got Tampa Bay. I also wanted to just comment on what Paul was saying. If you're going to fade those top two guys on the blue line for Colorado, I wanted to give a shout out to Bowen Byram, what he's done for Colorado. It's a good value pick for DFS. He's top 5 in puck possession among all players as a rookie defenseman this postseason. Again, I think it's going to be close. I have Avs in 7, but in order for it to get to 7, Tampa's going to respond, I think, a couple of different times and knock the Avalanche onto their rear end and provide some adversity that they haven't really faced so far this postseason, except for the Blues series.
All right, so you got your pick? Winning. Who's winning?
Tampa.
That's what I like.
For sure.
I think he implied Tampa pretty strongly there.
No, I just need
Okay.
to hear it. Jeffrey, go ahead. Who's winning?
Colorado. I'm going to stick with my Colorado in 5. They're going to win 2. Tampa will get 1 at home, but Colorado's winning tonight.
Paul, talk to me, Goose.
Jeff is still thinking about the Edmonton sweep, and he's giving Colorado too much credit. I think Tampa's going to bounce back, and they're going to wrest control of this series going home.
All right. Pete, thanks for your breakdown for when you're picking Tampa for tomorrow night. Okay, guys.
No doubt.
You're the man, dude. We are going to talk. Let's see, Jeff, you're going to hang out because we got some NFL hangover and also some F1 because it's north of the border. It's like in your backyard.
Yeah, and I mean, you need at least one experienced like race car expert on the show. With Pierce being not the one, so me.
Exactly. And the good news is we're not going to show your points race here in NASCAR either because NASCAR's not.
It's a fresh start for F1.
We're back after this quick break. Producer Drew wants me to shut up.
We're all winners.
All right, Jeff Ulrich is back. Pierce Dietrich is here. We're going to start with some NFL hangover here, guys. We're going to overreact some OTA and minicamp storylines, but then we're going to also shift gears, see what I did there, to some F1 because NASCAR not in action this weekend. Let's go ahead and start here. Arthur Smith saying yesterday, Desmond Ritter is light years ahead of most young quarterbacks. There's no Matt Ryan anymore in Atlanta, no Calvin Ridley. Mariota penciled in as the starter. What are the chances we see Ritter this season, though, Pierce? What do you think?
It's great that he's looking good this early, but I don't think we're going to see much of him. The Falcons it's not a good team. No reason to rush him in there and to feed him to the Wolves. We've seen that go really badly for other young quarterbacks, first-round picks, mind you, that they have shoved and fed to the Wolves or the Lions and then just never really were able to recover. We've seen other quarterbacks fare well that set out their first season, or at least set out the first half of the season. And when we look at those guys, we're talking about quarterbacks who were premier elite first-round picks. Ritter was a third-round pick. Typically, when we look at third-round picks, no one is even considering them starting in their first season, maybe even in their second season. I think there's very little chance that we see Ritter this year. If we do, then it's probably a really bad sign for the Falcons.
All right, Jeff, I'm going to give this kid plenty of credit because he had plenty of experience, 4 years Cincinnati, went to the college football playoff as a senior. Now it appears there's a chance he could beat out Marcus Mariota in training camp and become QB1 down there.
Yeah, I mean, Pierce is right from the perspective of he's a third-round pick, so like we don't want to build him up too much. But at the same time, like Ritter's a very interesting prospect. I mean, I know a lot of people, and myself included, we're pretty high on him. He's got a quick release. He's very mobile. Like he's got speed. He's got legitimate speed. And, his only real kind of downfall was just some weird accuracy issues where it seemed like he has a good throwing motion, but he just wasn't that accurate on certain like mid-tier and like longer throws to the outside. So if he can clean that up, I think there's actually a lot of potential for Desmond Ritter. I'm not really shocked that there's some good signs coming out of him early. The other thing you have to look at this is, and I do think you will see Ritter start games this year, he's only got to beat out Marcus Mariota. I'm actually like Marcus Mariota for fantasy purposes this year, but there is going to be stretches where Marcus Mariota probably isn't that good because that's kind of what got him out of a starting job in the first place. He's just really not that accurate a quarterback anyway. So, of course, Atlanta's going to be bad this year. And, of course, they're going to want to see what they have in Ritter later in the year. Is it the smartest thing to do? No, I kind of agree with Pierce that way. But NFL franchises aren't that smart. They're probably going to throw this guy to the Wolves at some point. I think you will see Ritter at some point. I'm very interested to see how this quarterback battle goes out. I think there is a slight chance, too, you see this guy start. Look, we've seen it with Russell Wilson before. I think that you've got a kind of a similar prospect in Ritter with intriguing upside from a rushing and just a throwing standpoint. So I'm high on Ritter. I won't really be shocked in any of these scenarios, but expect to see him start at least one game for the Falcons this year, in my opinion.
All right, guys, let's go to New York here, too, because for some reason the Jets have become like a trendy Super Bowl pick, and the Jets' first-round pick from 2020, that's Mekhi Becton, he said he's going to make critics eat their words. So he's very important to protecting Zach Wilson. Everyone is on the line. They beefed it up a little bit in free agency as well. How are you viewing a young Jets offense for fantasy purposes here, Jeff?
Yeah. So, the Jets are going to have their offensive line, like Becton, whatever. If he bounces back, great. I don't really like it when guys come out. Just do your work on the field.
Yeah.
And make us shut
And
up
then
with
talk.
your actions
And then
instead
talk.
of your words.
I agree.
We know that the eating the W's doesn't work from Jameis Winston. So enough of this eating stuff. Like it's not really going to work out, guys. As their offensive line just lacks depth. And I'm not sure how much better it's actually going to be this year. And I think that is going to be a slight problem for week-to-week consistency. Now, you've got Elijah Moore, who's getting great targeting down the stretch. I expect that to continue. And I would prefer him over their first-round pick from this year. I think that you're more likely going to see Moore stay on the outside, get those longer targets, and I think his targeting will stay pretty strong. So I'm high on Elijah Moore and Zach Wilson, especially for DFS, using them as potentially, as comeback plays or as stacking partners as well. So I think that Elijah Moore is a player that you should be very high on this year. But, take it with the Jets offense is still going to be like week to week, perhaps poor. And I think that you'll see Zach Wilson also suffer as a result.
Pierce, after years of fantasy football irrelevancy, could the Jets offense finally reappear on the fantasy radar?
Well, they could if you read the Jets blog that I checked out. No, it wasn't written by Kenny Ducey, but in this Jets blog, which references PFF. Yeah, shout out to Kenny.
Yeah.
So PFF at the end of the season ranked the Jets offensive line as the 11th best in football. And if you look at the individual performances of each lineman, analytically, they're really good. Now, the thing is, they never really played together. They dealt with injuries, and for whatever reasons, it just never really gelled. And so you had Zach Wilson with the worst bad pass rate in the league, the worst on-target rate in the league, the worst pressure rate in the league. He was hurried more than any quarterback. But, hey, PFF says, hey, if you look at these guys individually and look at their metrics, they are studs. And Becton checks out, Vera Carter, I believe. Every single lineman on that line is top tier. Their worst is a 75 graded center, which is still a pretty solid offensive line. So maybe, after an offseason of gelling, and if they can stay healthy, that should help Wilson out. But again, Wilson's got to make better passes, not hold on to the ball as long, and then maybe he can get it to Elijah Moore and the receivers.
I mean, maybe they have more fantasy football relevancy this season than their division rival, the Patriots. We'll see. But former Patriot Julian Edelman, little teaser here, says, I don't know. We'll see, when asked about a return to the NFL to play with Brady in Tampa. That was at an appearance in Croatia last weekend. He said, it would most likely need to be the Patriots, not the Bucks, if he did come back. But question is here, Jeff, how bad could the Patriots use him right now?
I mean, look, having a veteran like Julian Edelman, sure. I mean, that's great. I mean, I feel like what Jacoby Myers brings to that team is probably a little bit better right now, just in terms of, where Julian Edelman is in age and stuff like that. So, I mean, yeah, it's not exactly a deep receiving core for New England. Devontae Parker will certainly get hurt at some point as well. So, I mean, that'll be a factor. I really feel with Edelman, though, he can say whatever he wants, and I'm interested to know why he was in Croatia, but we'll talk about that after the show.
Yeah.
I think that with Julian Edelman, what he's doing is he's going to sit back and he's going to watch what the Bucks do this year. And do they get injury issues? Does Russell Gage get injured or something like that? Does Gronk come back and they need that extra veteran presence? Are the Bucks just winning the division outright and he can just slot in and go for that Super Bowl run? I'm pretty sure that's what Edelman's plan is. I don't care what he says about, maybe I'll go to the Patriots. What value is there at this point in his career and going back to the Patriots and just being like a role player for them for a season where they might go like 10-7 or something like that? I think that Edelman, if he comes back, it's got to be the Bucks. Like, it's just got to be. So I don't know. Yeah, the Patriots could absolutely use him. They don't have a deep receiving core, and like I said, Parker, I'm just not sold on. Period as a player. So that would be good for them if he did come back. But I just don't see that happening personally.
And you and I have talked before, like Parker, I believe, has only played one season, like all 16 regular season games. But by the way, he was making an appearance here, Jeff, at the Sunset Sports Media Festival in Croatia. Okay, so there's the answer. There's the answer to that. Pierce, his teaser, it's really nothing more than just that. Still only 36, and those nagging injuries can feel a little better, right, after a few seasons off?
Oh, only 36.
Hey, yeah, but look at him, bro. He's chiseled.
89 in football here is Emerson.
He looks like he's been chiseled.
Variety who takes all those hits that he's taken. I mean, I can't believe he's even considering it. From the Patriots' perspective, like Jeff mentioned, this is already Myers' role. Now, Jacoby Myers really hasn't blossomed into what he was supposed to be. He probably won't at this point. But if they bring in Edelman, that's going to really slow his growth and development. And it's probably just going to be the end of Jacoby Myers. I don't see that happening. And again, Jeff's right. The Bucks is the place for him. That he can get that dirty yardage role, the slot guy underneath. It makes sense. He's got the bromance. I think the bromance is much stronger with Tom Brady than it is with the Patriots and Belichick. And you can wait halfway through the season. I don't think you can wait halfway through the season to sign with the Patriots.
No, you're right.
Still, I'll throw this out there. I think Cole Beasley would be a great fit for the Bucks, but we shall see.
Yeah, the one thing that the one thing that Edelman has been consistent with, though, he has said if he comes back, it is going to be with the Patriots. But I don't know. Let's talk until it actually happens. While you guys are here, I would like to ask you a few F1 questions because it's in Jeff's backyard, like literally his backyard in Canada this weekend because there's no NASCAR. So this is good for you, Jeff, because we're not going to show the NASCAR point standings with your rival here with Pierce, which right now is really not much of a rivalry because he's smoking you. But as F1 heads to Canada, who's the best DFS play in this one, Pierce?
I mean, it's still up to the Red Bulls and the Ferraris. Red Bull has been on top over the last 2 months. But when these two teams go head-to-head and neither suffer mechanical failures, the Ferraris under Charles Leclerc are better. But the thing is, at the beginning of the season, Red Bull had mechanical failures. They fixed those problems. Ferrari, the last handful of races, just something goes wrong. Last week, they had a mechanical failure. The week before that, or the race before that, they had a bad pit strategy in the rain at Monaco. They had a mechanical failure the week before that at Spain. So if the Ferraris can keep their engines intact, then I really think Leclerc has a chance. But, that is an if, and it just seems like Red Bull every single week just is running away with these races. Canada is a high horsepower track, and we have seen the Red Bulls be a little bit more at the low drag, high horsepower races. Like we saw last week at Baku, we saw earlier this season at the Jeddah Street Circuit. I think we're going to see the same thing in Canada. And I think you got to go with Max Verstappen as the number one DFS pick.
I mean, it's tough to argue with that, Jeff. He won 4 of the last 5 races. I can't wait to see your live reports on Sunday there.
The corner around my sandbox is going to be it's going to be tough, but you could see some crashes there. So
is there anyone
it's
outside?
In my backyard, like you said. So
Jeff, is there anyone outside Verstappen who's just the obvious play? Can you make an argument for anybody else?
I think that you can. I think this is a really good time to just try and jump on Ferrari. It's exactly as Pierce said. You look at qualifying, Leclerc has been the best car, in multiple races. So I know it's qualifying, it's one lap, but generally this is at some point it's going to translate to the races. It just feels like it has to. And it was very much the same story at the beginning of the year. Leclerc grabbed the win because Red Bull had the engine stuff. And I feel like this is probably a point where they figure it out. So I like getting on him. And I think that, Leclerc at 15-3 is a great captain spot. And I think that you can double down. I think you should double down with the Ferrari team if you can fit them in your lineup this week with Sands. I think having a great shot at a podium too, because he's been good as well. It's just, mechanical failures.
Hey,
so,
watch out.
Wow. That was behind the scenes, friends. But I like stacking Ferrari in this race for sure.
Those were the muscly traps of Samir here. He's really grinding hard this morning in studio. What's a bet you like for the F1 race in Canada, Pierce?
Yeah, let me piggyback off of what Jeff said.
Piggyback. I see what you just did.
Yeah, okay. You can get Leclerc at plus 425, and the point that he makes about qualifying, that is a very, very big deal. In NASCAR, maybe it isn't as much of a deal. But in F1, if you get the pole, it is very difficult. It's very challenging to pass someone, especially when they have a very fast car. They're out in front of you. Maybe you can undercut them or overcut them or however you try to do it on pit road. But for the most part, winning that pole is a big deal. And Leclerc has been an absolute hero through qualifying. We see the speed. It's just been issues during the race. He's very likely going to, again, be perfect in qualifying and get the pole. Canada is not an easy track to pass at. He'll get the pole. He'll pull out ahead. I mean, you look at the last time we raced at Canada, Sebastian Vettel led 67 laps on to what should have been a win, but he got a penalty. He did not get the win. But I would expect Leclerc get the pole, win the race.
All right. What do you think here, Ulrich? Let's go.
Yeah,
Give me a bet.
I mean, look, I just kind of laid it out, right? So obviously Leclerc plus 425 on the DraftKings Sportsbook. I think this is a great. His odds have finally inflated to where I think it's like a very good time to take a shot. And I think Sands Jr. to podium at plus 150, same thing. I would get big on Ferrari this weekend. I think it's time to take a shot with them.
All right, dudes. You are both done. Really nice work. Enjoy the race, Jeff. Have fun. Pierce, enjoy your weekend. We're going to miss you. We have one more break to go. We have one more block to go. We got Gary in here. We got Easy E here. We're going to talk some baseball picks, DFS picks on the other side. The big, beefy, and boisterous Mike Trout, putting the Angels on his back like JanSport Thursday night. 34 DK fantasy points, a pair of two-run taters. I believe he drove in all of LA's offense in that 4-1 victory over the Mariners. His teammate and fellow superstar Shohei Ohtani, bottom of the screen there, throwing 6 scoreless, extending his hitting streak to 11 games. These go to 11. Name that movie, Gary and Thorne.
This is Spinal Tap.
Yeah, my man. I love that about you. Also love the fact that Eric Halterman is here from Murdo Wire. Let's start with some DFS. We got 12-game Friday slate. It's jam-packed. Favorite high-priced hitter on the slate. Wait, no, mound. Got to start on the mound. Who are you giving the ball to on the mound, Garion?
I know, I'm also very distracted by your jersey.
Oh, dude, sorry. All right,
you
uncultured swine. It's a sweater. This is an NHL sweater, okay? That's what they're called.
I'm the Canadian one, so yeah, that was probably pretty bad on my part. Carlos Rodon. Let's talk about Carlos Rodon. He's $9,900 tonight. The returns haven't been as great the past month as they were back in April, granted, but his overall numbers are still fantastic this season. He's got a strikeout rate above 30%. He's got a 2.58 FIP. He's been amazing. And the Pittsburgh Pirates have not been amazing, especially when it comes to hitting the baseball. They've been absolutely terrible the past 14 days, just a 71 WRC plus. And they've also been awful against left-handed pitching specifically. They've got an 86 WRC plus against southpaws for the season as a whole. That is the third worst mark in baseball. They strike out more than enough to make Carlos Rodon a prospect to maybe even hit double-digit strikeouts tonight. So I think below 10K, albeit just below 10K, I'm going to go with Carlos Rodon.
All right, who is your man on the mound, Easy E?
Yeah, there's 2 lefties at the top of the slate who I like a lot tonight. I'm glad Gary talked about my second favorite in Rodon there, so that I get to talk about Tariq Skubal at $9,000, who I like basically just as much and comes $900 cheaper. Skubal, I really liked early in his career. I liked some things about him, but he had a serious fly ball problem. He was striking guys out, didn't walk too many guys, but just gave up way too many homers. He's been increasingly featuring a sinker, though, which has corrected that flaw. So his strikeout rate of 27.6% this year is in line with those strong career numbers, but his ground ball rate is suddenly a strength, up at 47.3%, and he stopped walking guys, just 4.4% there. He's now a very strong all-around pitcher. His 2.71 ERA pretty much is right in line with the midpoint of his ERA estimators. He is a legitimate frontline starter these days. Struggled last time out against the Blue Jays, but I think you can give a guy a pass against a lineup like that, especially when he had an ERA of 160 over his previous 7 starts. I think he looks a lot more like that guy this time out against a Rangers team that sits just 22nd in team WRC+.
All right, well, you got a high-priced hitter. Now we can go there on this slate, Eric. Who is it?
Yeah, I'm not going to go quite to the top, but at 4,600, Kyle Schwarber is a guy I like a lot. He's a guy who gets really scary when he's hot, as we saw at times last year, and as we're seeing right now. Had just stayed 95 WRC plus through May 29th, but since then, a 220 WRC plus. That's 16 games in which he's homered 8 times, scored 17 runs, drove in 15 more, striking out at a league average clip over that stretch while walking nearly 19% of the time. Schwarber is one of the best hitters in the league when he's on his game, and he is right now. I think he should remain that way against Paulo Espino, who's got a 2.08 ERA this year, but it's been mostly in relief for his career of 4.13 ERA. He is nothing special. Nobody you have to be scared of with a guy like Schwarber when Schwarber's hitting like he is right now.
Yeah, he was the second leading scorer on the DFS slate last night, so 32 points, 2 behind Mike Trout there. Gary, who's your high price hitter tonight, dude?
Yeah, I'm not going to get too complicated here. Just going to go with Manny Machado against a left-handed pitcher at Coors Field. I think there's ways you could save. I think Schwarber's a really nice play. Someone like Teoscar Hernandez against a left-handed pitcher. He's been heating up recently and is less than 5K, but Arenado has been so good against left-handed pitching, really throughout the entirety of his career, but specifically this season as well. He's got a 323 ISO and a 410 WOBA within the split so far in 2022. And, you know, no real fault of Kyle Freeland, who's been perfectly fine, like the dictionary definition of average this season. But when he pitches at Coors Field, he's got a 5.35 ERA. So I think there's going to be some runs scored tonight. You happen to take a look at the over-under there on the DraftKings Sportsbook. They also think there's going to be some runs scored in this game tonight. So I'll take Manny Machado.
Okay, yeah, went 3 for 5 in a win over the Cubs yesterday. $200 more expensive tonight compared to yesterday at $6,100 there. What about a value play? Who's the best value play in your opinion, Garion?
So I don't know what the White Sox do in their minor league system, but they seem to just bred guys who can hit left-handed pitching exceedingly well, even though you don't really think of them too much as a household name. Jake Berger's been day-to-day, but it seems like reports are he's going to be back in the lineup tonight, and his numbers are staggering against left-handed pitching this season. He's going up against a good one in Framber Valdez, who does not give up a lot of home runs or extra base hits. That's something to keep in mind. But Berger's just $3,500. He's probably going to be hitting in the middle of this White Sox lineup if he is available tonight. He's hitting 400 against left-handed pitching so far this season. No player in the American League with at least 40 plate appearances against Southpaws has a higher expected WOBA within the split than Jake Berger at 534. He's a couple points ahead of Mike Trout. So Jake Berger against lefties is a pretty good way to go.
What do you got for value, Eric?
I'm going to go back to that same Phillies Nationals game and talk about Lane Thomas at 3,200. He had really struggled through the end of May. A 61 WRC plus, wasn't earning regular playing time. But since the start of June, he's turned things around dramatically, hitting 327, 407, 615. And you always like him when he's against a lefty, which he'll be against here. Bailey Falter called up to start the second game of this doubleheader. Career 5.18 ERA, mostly in relief. Doesn't walk guys, but doesn't really do anything else. Thomas for his career, 897 OPS against lefties versus a 674 OPS against righties. He's one of those cheap lefty mashers who should hit at the top of the order here that you really like rounding out a lineup when you get that matchup against a pretty easy southpaw, which he'll have here.
All right, guys, we got less than 2 minutes to go in the show. Last question here. We'll take you to the DK Sportsbook. So, Eric, hook me up with your favorite run line, money line, or run total bet tonight.
Let's go White Sox plus 140 at the Astros. That line looks fair if you think that the White Sox record is a complete reflection of their talent, but I don't think it is. They've been underperforming this year. They're not this mediocre. They got Lucas Giolito on the mound, who has technically 2 poor starts in his last 3, but he struck out 8 batters in each of those bad starts. I think he's still Lucas Giolito. I think he's better than Framber Valdez, despite Valdez having a better ERA. I think they should be a lot closer to a coin flip, maybe plus 110 for the White Sox. I think plus 140 is far too much.
Gary Bear, bring us home, dude.
I'm looking at the total in the Cardinals-Red Sox game. It just seems really high. It's up at 10. And while I respect both of these offenses, I just think it's too big a number. I'm going to take the under at minus 115. St. Louis specifically has been a lot better against left-handed pitching than they have been against right-handed pitching, where they're a little bit more middle of the pack in 2022. And also, Michael Wacha and Adam Wainwright have just been really good so far this season. Some of the ERA estimators don't love them as much as just their baseline ERA, but there's nothing really that stood out as a major red flag for either of those two guys. They both come in with an ERA below 3 in this contest. Michael Wacha has been amazing at Fenway Park. He's got a .86 ERA pitching in Boston so far this season, while Adam Wainwright has a 2.16 ERA across his last 7 starts. So I think you've got two solid pitchers going to the mound here. Maybe the fact that Yadier Molina's on the IL scares some people off of this, but I just think this number's too high.
You too. Tremendous work. Please enjoy your weekend responsibly. Everybody, the Sweat is back here in studio live 11 o'clock Eastern time on Tuesday morning. We are not here on Monday, but you can also watch the slate tonight, 5 o'clock Eastern time on the DraftKings YouTube, Twitter, and Twitch pages. So I'm told here by producer Drew, Glash will be there, and LaMarca. They'll look back again at the NBA Finals, maybe some futures. They'll talk some baseball, and also LaMarca's sexy saxophone medleys. All right, everybody. Enjoy that. We'll see you later.